Happy Pride Month, everyone! I'm so stoked it's finally June. And honestly, nothing quite screams pride, queer joy like trademark law. Yeah, we're gonna be talking about that today. We're gonna be talking about the Patagonia versus Patagonia lawsuit right now. There's a lot of headlines and clickbait, I think, wanting you to choose one side over the other. I think that we should just be informed and do our research before we're making any type of decisions on who to side with. I'm going to try and be as neutral as possible, not let my biases slip through, and just lay out the case for you as I've found it. As we know, Patagonia has filed a federal lawsuit in the United States and back in January against Win Wiley. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. The person behind Patagonia. And the company wants, I guess, $1 for damages and a court order to stopping Pattie from trademarking Patagonia for merchandise and events. They say that they have this legal duty to themselves and their brand and whatever to protect anything that might cause, consumer confusion, irreparable harm, all that stuff. And that even if they just let this infringement slide, even for Pattie, it could make it harder to stop hate groups and bad actors later on. I'm not saying that Pattie is a bad actor or runs with hate groups. In fact, quite the opposite, right? Patagonia says that the lawsuit could cost her up to $1 million in legal fees, and that Patagonia is a corporation trying to erase an activist, which is wild to think about. And I think this brings up the $1 question that nobody is asking. And it's that if Patagonia only wants $1 in a court order, why doesn't Patagonia just offer to pay that $1 and negotiate a licensing agreement or something along those lines? I don't know. I'm not a trademark lawyer, obviously. But I think this question really exposes what the fight is about, and it's not about money. In a roundabout way, it's about money, but it's more about who controls the name, and that's worth a hell lot more of $1 on both sides. Patagonia has been around for 8 years, right? And most of that time, Patagonia has said that they've looked the other way, kind of just treating it as parody and persona-based activism. And the lawsuit wasn't filed when Patagonia popped up on the scene. It was after Patagonia applied for that trademark for the name for commercial merchandise, including apparel and other merch that Patagonia argues mimics its logo and branding. You have to be sympathetic towards Patagonia to some degree, because Pattie says that the trademark application was her kind of going on the defense. She's seen other drag queens lose bookings, their social media, their names in trademark disputes. So she was just wanting to protect everything that she's built. And I think that's fair. I think any person would. I think it's also important to recognize that she was openly selling branded products while using wordplay that directly invokes Patagonia's brand. And I'll leave the sticker up here. Like girl. That's very similar. That I can see causing consumer confusion. Her other merch, not so much. When you file to own that brand in the same commercial class as Patagonia's core business, which is, apparel, you've moved from activism to commerce. Not necessarily my opinion, that's just what the trademark application says. It is important to bring up is that drag has always existed in conversation with parody, satire, imitation, and exaggeration. Long before social media, drag performers were playing with recognizable public figures, cultural icons, beauty standards, gender expectations, and brand identities. The entire art form is built on transformation, wordplay, and taking something familiar and making it into something that's funny or strange or, political. And I think that's why we kind of all see Patagonia as obvious parody. The name itself is a joke. It's a pun. It's a drag persona that is turning an outdoor apparel brand. It's funny. See, I'm laughing. It's funny that turns an outdoor apparel brand into an environmental activist who stunts in 6-inch heels, you know? Like, it's drag. That's art. It's pretty classic. That's what drag queens do. That's what all performers kind of do, if we really want to get into it. But going back to the trademark of it all, it's still complicated. Trademark law doesn't give a fuck. It doesn't care if something started as a parody. It asks whether consumers could become confused about who owns the brand, especially when money and merchandise and trademark registrations enter the picture, right? And I think that's why this case just feels so messy in general. Culturally, we all know Patagonia makes sense as a drag persona, but legally, the system doesn't see it that way. I think that's honestly when Patagonia and Patagonia stop seeing eye to eye on this situation. Honestly, I also think that Patagonia is probably a little threatened by Pattie as well. I think if anything, I think it just kind of shows that our legal system has a huge stick up their ass. There's another phrase that keeps like showing up everywhere, which is like irreparable harm. But what does this really mean? I mean, Patagonia argues that Patagonia's trademark application and related branding could cause irreparable harm to Patagonia's brand. I don't know if that's, again, I'm not a trademark lawyer. Maybe that's standard legal language. Like maybe every trademark lawyer would file using those exact words. But as a regular person reading this, I kind of just had to stop and ask, like, what exactly is the harm? I think it's interesting that consumers, after all of these years, have managed to survive without collectively believing that Patagonia has turned into a drag queen. So I don't know, like what's changed? I think the legal answer is straightforward: trademarks, merchandise, and commercial exposure. But the phrase irreparable harm still feels strange when applied to someone whose activism has largely promoted environmental protection of our public lands, and outdoor access. All things that Patagonia itself as a company cares about as well. And to be clear, trademark law doesn't require Patagonia to prove that Patagonia is a good or bad person either. The company is just arguing that unauthorized use of similar mark can weaken its control over its brand regardless of intent. So that's their argument, okay? But culturally, it's different, right? Like a lot of people hear irreparable harm and assume Patagonia is saying Patagonia herself is harmful, which she is not. And that's ridiculous. And I don't think that's how I would describe her. Most people would describe someone who has been out there and has spent years getting people excited about conservation in the outdoors. Supporters of Patagonia have wondered whether a drag performer is being treated differently than a non-queer parody account might be, and that's a fair question. I think it is hard to prove discrimination. It's very different from proving a trademark dispute. And based on public record, the lawsuit itself is framed around trademark law, not, opposition to LGBTQ people. I think another important question to ask is, who is Patagonia actually for? Patagonia describes herself as an intersectional environmentalist working to uplift LGBTQIA plus people and other underrepresented groups in the outdoors. Her nonprofit, The Outdoorist Oath, has all these workshops on white supremacy and racial literacy, arguing that confronting white supremacy is necessary for creating a more inclusive outdoors. And those are real positions. That's real political content right there. Patagonia frames this lawsuit as a corporate attack on queer climate activists at the height of anti-LGBTQIA plus politics. Is that true? Is that actually accurate? Or is it a fundraising and mobilization strategy that uses very real dangers facing trans and queer people to win sympathy for a trademark dispute? I'm just asking. I'm not saying that our current political state isn't dangerous. It most certainly is. But Patagonia suing over a name or a pun on a name, is that the same level as bathroom bans and healthcare restrictions? Is that on the same level? That's all I'm gonna ask you guys. Is that on the same level? Because like when a corporation actually donates to anti-LGBTQIA causes, we call that out, right? Like Chick-fil-A. We've been calling out Chick-fil-A. They actually are doing harm to the queer community and fighting for those political stances that I mentioned. Like, I think it's important to recognize that the corporation, Patagonia, hasn't done that. They've actually been one of the most consistent corporate supporters of LGBTQIA plus inclusion in the outdoor industry. So who is this fight really for? Is it for the most marginalized people in the queer community? Trans women of color, disabled queer people, rural LGBTQIA plus youth who literally can't afford to leave their homes or even afford a Patagonia jacket or even a Patagonia ticket? Is this fight between two relatively privileged entities, a billion-dollar company and a millionaire drag queen with 1.8 million followers, arguing over, brand ownership dressed up in language as resistance? I don't know the answer. You need to sit with those questions and look within yourself. I have my own feelings about it, obviously, but I just feel like these questions aren't being asked enough. What's even in a name, right? The region of Patagonia, the actual mountains, forest, and ice fields spanning Chile and Argentina has been called Patagonia for a century. Neither Patagonia, the company, nor Patagonia, the drag queen, invented it. And Patagonia has said that too. But I think it's still ironic. The legal fight is over who gets to own a word that neither of them created. Meanwhile, there are real lawsuits involving the actual land of Patagonia. Mining companies trying to drill in Patagonia, environmental groups fighting pollution permits, and communities trying to, protect their local ecosystems. Those cases involve clean air, drinking water, and survival of communities. Neither Patagonia, the company, nor Patagonia, the activist, is spending their legal budgets on those fights. That's the bigger issue here. They're spending it on each other, which is freaking lame. Where does the protection of the actual land fall within this legal action? Nowhere. And that's the point. The land is collateral damage to a branding war. And again, not only is that just lame, that's disgusting and really sad. Social media has turned this whole thing into a morality play. Patagonia's 1.8 million followers are calling for a boycott. Comment sections are filled with people who have clearly read one headline or seen one Instagram reel and who has already decided who the villain is. And honestly, the lack of criticism on Pattie's own platform raises questions too. What does performative activism look like on both sides? On the one hand, Patagonia cannot claim we're in the business to save our home planet while deploying the full force of corporate litigation against one of the most visible climate activists and communicators of her generation. At the start of Pride Month, nonetheless, that's so dumb, without expecting people to notice the hypocrisy. Legally right can still be politically stupid. On the other hand, Patagonia cannot claim that this is purely about corporate bullying while also attempting to trademark a name that derived directly from the famous brand for commercial merchandise, while framing a trademark dispute as equivalent to the erasure of queer people from public life. That's clickbait. I think this is what accountability would look like, and neither side has done it. But Patagonia could drop the lawsuit tomorrow and negotiate a coexistent agreement that protects its trademark while also allowing Patagonia to keep performing and fundraising and doing her activism. Trademark law does allow for consent agreements, and they could license the name for $1 and turn it into a collab instead of a court battle. But the fact is that they haven't. after years of conversation, suggests both sides may have let ego and principle become the same thing. Instead, we have two parties who agree on almost everything, like climate action, LGBTQ plus rights, public lands protection, etc., tearing each other down in federal court over a pun. Nah. The real losers aren't Patagonia's lawyers or Patagonia's legal fund. The real losers are the people who need both of them focused on something bigger than themselves. Another piece of the story is that in 2022, we know that the CEO of Patagonia transferred his ownership of Patagonia into the Patagonia Purpose Trust and the Holdfast Collective, saying that the Earth is now our only shareholder. And the entire point was to lock the company's environmental mission into place forever. Patagonia said the new structure would ensure there was never deviation from the intent of the founder. But I think here's what I keep coming back to. For years, Patagonia existed in the public, and Patagonia knew about her. Both of them benefited from their overlap in audiences. So the lawsuit only came about after the filings and the commercial expansion were involved. Legally, distinction matters. Talk to any lawyer, they'll tell you distinction matters. But as people in society and people with culture, it does feel different because Patagonia wasn't built on aggressive brand protection. It was built on the idea that the best jacket is one that you don't have to replace. One of the company's most famous message was, "Don't buy this jacket." And their apparel is made to last. They've built an entire empire telling people to consume less, repair more, and stop treating everything as something to be endlessly monetized. So when $1 billion company spends months in federal court fighting an environmental drag queen over a name that has existed for nearly a decade, people are going to naturally wonder whether the mission is still there or if Patagonia is now being ran by corporate greed. I understand why Patagonia wants to defend their trademark, but I also don't believe Patagonia deserves to lose the name she spent 8 years building. The name isn't just about the merch anymore. It's her career, it's her activism, it's the community that she's created. Again, we're just watching two allies fight over ownership while the planet they both claim to be defending gets pushed to the background and needs our help right now. So, you know what? Patagonia has a legitimate case. Sorry, Pattie. Sally. Trademark law is very unforgiving, and companies that don't defend their marks lose them. And on the other hand, Patagonia has a legitimate political critique. A billion-dollar company is suing a drag queen who raises money for climate causes at this very political moment is a terrible look. Terrible look, regardless of the legal merits. Two things can be true, and in this case kind of proves that. But it feels like neither side wants you to believe that two things can be true at once. I don't know. What makes it so heartbreaking is that they should just be allies. Like, can you guys just make up and kiss already? Patagonia has spent years getting young queer people excited about the outdoors and climate justice. Patagonia has spent decades fighting for those same lands. Instead of standing shoulder to shoulder in this fight, they're locked in a legal death match over a pun. And we cannot afford that right now. In sustainability and environmentalism, we need everyone to be fighting. We can't be fighting each other, not like this. But I will end with this really quickly. It's just do your own homework, right? Read the actual court filings. Don't just watch Instagram reels on this. Talk to your friends about it. And this kind of goes for like every current event also. Ask questions. Ask who benefits from framing this as a moral crusade rather than a commercial dispute. And remember, the mountains don't care what name is on the jacket or what your Instagram handle is. They just need people to show the F up and fight for them without needing a logo to prove that they belong. Because right now, the company that has taught us to love the outdoors is teaching us something entirely new. How easily a mission-driven brand can lose its soul when greed takes over. Maybe Patagonia wins the lawsuit. Maybe Patagonia wins it. But if the end result is Patagonia losing the name she spent 8 years building, while Patagonia spends millions defending a trademark worth billions, I think a lot of people are going to wonder whether protecting the brand has become more important than protecting the earth. Anyways, if you like this video, follow us. We're Reciprocity Lab. We're here to just communicate and connect with one another on all sustainability topics. Subtle plug for us. Hit our follow button. Appreciate you, love you, and thanks for caring. Bye.